All right, welcome to JC Sports Red Alert podcast on the JC Sports YouTube page. We're talking about the Detroit Red Wings because even though the Detroit Red Wings season is over and we're focusing on the Grand Rapids Griffins right now, there was something that came out of media day when they did the locker clean out. And I was very interested to hear what happened with the way Dylan Larkin was talking. And when we talk about Dylan Larkin, he's not a guy who's going to brash out. He's not a guy who's a p- particularly vocal guy. He's usually a guy that's kind of calm, reserved, says all the right things. But here in this video clip, Dylan Larkin says something, and it's a little bit of a shot at someone in particular, and that someone in particular is Mr. Stevie Y.
You got to come up with wins, and I think especially in March, it was hard. That we didn't do anything, and then I felt the group kind of we didn't gain any momentum from the trade deadline, and guys were kind of down about it. So it'd be nice to add something and bring a little bit of a spark on the ice and maybe a morale boost as well.
Larks, how do you feel that you've maybe evolved?
So you hear that video clip and you hear about, Larkin saying it could have been a good morale boost. It could have been a boost for just on ice surface, right? He's right. And, I know a lot of people, Steve Eiserman can do no wrong. Steve Eiserman has done a little bit wrong, but for the most part, his drafting's been really good. His free agency pickups have been a little bit subpar. I'll give him the one on Andrew Kopp. That's a pretty good one. And when Andrew Kopp went out for the Detroit Red Wings, you've seen a little bit of the team heading back in the wrong direction. And when they lost their second line center, which was Andrew Kopp, it would have been nice to go get a second line center, go get a guy who could potentially help you out. I know the prices are astronomical, but the price to getting the playoffs, just to give yourself a little bit a morale boost, give yourself the team a boost, and going into the offseason, look, you might not win a game in the playoffs, but at least you'll have a shot to, you know, go into the offseason and say, we made the playoffs, we got the monkey off our back. Now it goes on to next year, and next year is the 100th anniversary of the Detroit Red Wings. So, look, Steve Eiserman could say what he wants to say about how it's a process and all that jazz. Simply put, there's some things that Eiserman has done that haven't been all that cracked up to be. And when you hear Dylan Larkin say the things that he is saying, it's not saying it because he wants to say it. It's saying it because it needs to be said. And I think there was multiple people in the locker room who basically told them, like, look, it would have been nice to have a little morale boost. Maybe it's coming from a guy like Patrick Kane. Maybe it's coming from a guys who cannot speak up, younger guys. But the one thing that Steve Eiserman didn't do last year was go get someone to just give him a morale boost. Now, it might not work, but it might work, And look, there were several things this last off season that were just didn't make any sense from the Red Wings perspective. Trading Jake Wallman in a second to San Jose for future considerations. You know, I heard from people that they were in on the Steven Stamkos thing. They didn't get Steven Stamkos for whatever reason, and it turned out that they didn't get Steven Stamkos. That is what it is. They didn't get the Steven Stamkos. They didn't get the guy that they wanted. So here's how it goes. This is a huge offseason for the Red Wings. Huge offseason for Eiserman. And I think if Eiserman wants to gain the confidence of the room, he needs to make some impactful deals and he needs to help this team. Obviously, when you watch this Detroit Red Wings teams, there's two things that stand out. The penalty kill sucks, and they can't score 5-on-5. And what happens is a lot of times you watch the Red Wings and you're like, okay, they could score on a power play. So usually your power play is your top two lines, usually. There might be a guy from the third line or fourth line on there, depending on the circumstances. For penalty kill, it's usually your bottom six because your bottom six, they're usually the guys that go out there and kill the penalties. And if you watch any good team, you could see the bottom six they usually do a good job. The best teams in the playoffs that you'll watch are teams that have really good bottom six. They have a really good bottom six. I mean, when you have a team like the Florida Panthers, having Evan Rodriguez out there. Okay, that's a pretty good bottom six. Okay, you know, Brock Nelson is a bottom six of the Colorado Avalanche. That's a pretty good bottom six. And usually, when you have a good bottom six, you can really rectify some issues. You can get some scoring on five, and also you can be better on the penalty kill. When you watch this Red Wings team, there's a couple things that stand out in terms of, like I said, not good on penalty kill and not good on 5-on-5. And there is a statistic how they did throughout the whole season in terms of goals per goal X minus per game, and you can see that Detroit was negative 1.4, which is ninth in the league. You barely missed the playoffs, and you're ninth in the league in the Eastern Conference in this. As you can see, the first 2 months were brutal, but they did pick it up, and then they got better in April. They got better in January. They got better in in December when McLennan came. So you see that, and you go, okay, what needs to be said? Here's what needs to be said. Dylan Larkin is right. And Dylan Larkin is not crying about it. Dylan Larkin is actually giving you what it is. You know, look, there's several ways you could take this. You could say Dylan Larkin's crying about Stevie Y not adding at the deadline, but I know there's a lot of fans out there that were pissed off that they didn't add at the deadline. I know people are going to be like, well, let's save the prospects and all that jazz. You could save the prospects and still add at the deadline. It's not a linear opinion. Like if you're gonna go out there and you're gonna say, "Oh, let's keep the prospects we have, and let's go out there and whatever the case may be." I know for a fact they weren't getting Dylan Cousins because I think if you talk to people, like I've talked to people, like Cindy's talked to people, you hear people saying that the Buffalo Sabres were asking for Marco Casper, they were asking for Simon Edmondson, and that's just not a deal you can do. But can you get someone that can help you out a little bit? Craig Smith, I thought, helped you out a little bit, but a guy like Austin Watson coming up in the Grand Rapids Griffins, I thought he helped out a little bit, but they could have used a little bit of a morale boost. And like Larkin said, if they would have just got that little trade that would have gave him the morale boost, who knows where it would have ended up. But I think Larkin's right here, and I think Stevie Y really needs to get it together because you're going into a year where this is kind of make it or break it for a lot of people. And I thought the Detroit Red Wings would make the playoffs this year, but they didn't. Um, and I thought they should have fired Derek Lalonde earlier, but they didn't. And I thought they should have fired him last year, to be honest. So everything is set up for Stevie Y needs to make this happen because the coaching fire was on coaching. The coach not getting fired in the offseason is on him. The free agent signings like Justin Hall and Vladimir Tarasenko, and I'll tell you what, Jeff Petrie, I'm not mad at. Andrew Kopp, I'm not mad at. I'm not mad at JT Compher. What I am mad at is the garbage signings that have happened, and the pro scouting department really needs to get an overhaul. But this is a huge offseason for the Detroit Red Wings. This is a huge offseason for Stevie Y. And if there is anything that he needs to do, he needs to make this team better in all facets, including bottom six penalty kill. And if you can add a top line guy, which is hard to do it. But if not, you should focus on the younger players. I think the younger players should get a step up as we go into next year for the 100th anniversary of the Detroit Red Wings. We'll see you on another episode of the Red Alert Podcast. This is a JC Sports YouTube page. We'll see you on the next podcast and the next video clip as we talk about more Red Wings hockey here on JC Sports.